Hello everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Mitch Zone here on WPCX 97.1, where we cover sports topics throughout the professional leagues and here on Presbyterian College's campus. My name is Mitchell Mercer, and today I'll be covering the Tom Oriole with the Houston Texans franchise, why I don't believe Teddy Bridgewater is a problem with the Carolina Panthers, and give my 10 extremely early predictions for the 2021 NFL season. As for the Presbyterian College Blue Hose, I'll be discussing the men's basketball season so far, the women's lacrosse team losing to Winthrop, and the women's volleyball team as well. Before I get into it, I want to thank you again for tuning in on this Friday's show, and obviously, this is the first ever episode, so it means a whole lot to me personally for you to take time out of your day to listen to sports topics that I'm really passionate about. So thank you again to the listeners for showing love and support for the show, and with that, let's enter the Mitch Zone. The first topic we're going to talk about today involves a professional football franchise down in Houston, Texas, known as the Houston Texans. Obviously, the Texans have faded down to sea as an organization over the past year. Ever since blowing a 24-point lead to the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs last year, Houston has changed from being a potential Super Bowl contender to a laughingstock across the country. After the loss, the Texans made a shocking move in promoting head coach at the time, Bill O'Brien, to the general manager position, and shortly thereafter made an outrageous move by trading all-pro receiver DeAndre Hopkins, a receiver who's still in his prime, to the Arizona Cardinals for injury-prone David Johnson. The result of the trade eventually led to the release of Bill O'Brien, who was fired in October following the Texans' 0-4 start to the season. The team finished 4-12 to discuss a franchise quarterback Deshaun Watson, who was not only mad over the Hopkins trade, but believed the franchise didn't surround him with the talent needed to overtake the Chiefs and get to the promised land known as the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, the team's relationship with Watson is now at an all-time low, in which the Texans didn't allow his input for the vacant general manager and head coach openings. Now with Nick Caserio at the GM helm and David Culley as head coach, yet another shocking move to everybody since he's never been a coordinator in the league, Watson has demanded a trade, and many sources have claimed to state their relationship between the two is unrepairable. To big matter source for the Texans, the team recently parted ways with defensive star J.J. Watt, a locker room leader who not only has been the heart and soul of the franchise for the past decade, but someone who cared for the Houston community as well. The Texans also do not have a first or second round pick in the upcoming NFL draft. It's a lot to uncover, but many have asked the following questions. What should the Texans do with Deshaun Watson, and how do they repair the franchise moving forward? For me, it's simple. Texans are in a mess right now. You have Jack Easterby at the helm, the president, a GM in charge who comes from the Patriot way, in which it hasn't replicated well in the National Football League, and a coach who is 65 years old and hasn't been a coordinator in the league. If I'm Deshaun Watson, no wonder why I'm angry, because I was very close to competing in the Super Bowl. Now here I am having to go through more years rebuilding when I'm still in my prime. Looking at it, I think the Texans put themselves in the position they're in. I thought it was a bad idea that they traded DeAndre Hopkins. I thought it was a bad idea for putting Bill O'Brien in charge, general manager, instead of hiring an improving candidate. And I believe they didn't provide weapons in a good offensive line for Deshaun to do well. You have an aging defense that can't stop anybody, and to make matters worse, the earliest pick you have is a third rounder, and you don't have a locker room leader in J.J. Watt, and your star quarterback is calling out your organization. I'd say this, Houston fans, but if you want to succeed, you're going to have to get an exterminator in the building and clean house with the players, which includes trading Deshaun Watson. I understand it sucks to lose a great quarterback in him, but you don't want to be in a situation where you create long-term damage, where instead you can be set up to succeed in the long run by getting a lot of draft picks as you can. Looking at the roster, you have no running back, no receivers, an okay offensive line, a bad defensive line, weak linebackers, and a bad secondary. Not to mention that your best offensive player receiving in Will Fuller is going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. This is a no-brainer to me. You're going to have to get as many draft picks as you can in the near future, cut some veterans, get more cap space, and unfortunately, you're going to have to trade Deshaun Watson while you're at it, because it's probably going to be a massive haul of picks that won't happen in the history of the National Football League. I think if Houston doesn't make this move, it's only going to drive the franchise backward instead of forward, and if Texas want to get out of this mess, they're just going to have to make these moves in order for the long-term health of the franchise to be healthy. Another franchise whose future is in question is the Carolina Panthers franchise, particularly with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. There has been recent speculation that the Panthers want to move on from Teddy Bridgewater over the past few weeks. The team offered to trade him their 8th overall pick and the 5th rounder to Detroit Lions for quarterback Matthew Stafford, but the Lions decided to trade a former number 1 overall pick to the Los Angeles Rams. Carolina has also been rumored to have interest in Deshaun Watson if the Texans elect to trade him, as well as other quarterbacks as well. Bridgewater was signed to a 3-year deal back in March, and while he did play well at the beginning of the season, he did struggle down the stretch towards the end of the season, throwing for 15 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, and most of the interceptions thrown came in the red zone, where Carolina missed opportunities to score points. Bridgewater finished with a completion percentage of 69.1%, a QB rating at 92.1, and fumbled the ball 6 times, which resulted in 3 turnovers for the Panthers. A number of criticism made is Bridgewater's inability to lead the Panthers to tie or win football games, in which the quarterback went 0-8 in games in which he had the opportunity to lead the Panthers to victory or tie the game. I understand the Panthers' frustration with Bridgewater, especially where at times you felt this team was better than his 5-11 record. But I'm going to be honest. If the Panthers want to make the playoffs next year, do you really think that a quarterback prospect like Trey Lance, Mac Jones, who has some developmental concerns, or a quarterback bust like Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky, or Jameis Winston is going to lead the Panthers a better record than Bridgewater? You know what? I'm going to be honest. It's just a bunch of nonsense. Really. Like, what did you expect if you were the Carolina Panthers coming into this season? There was no way you were going to make the playoffs with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Matt Ryan in your division, and Carolina's roster, I thought, was one of the worst coming into this past NFL season, given the fact that guys like Cam Newton, Luke Kuechly, Greg Olsen, Graham Gano, guys known for their leadership, were all gone. In fact, even if Cam was the quarterback, I still think the Panthers would have been worse since Cam played his worst football of his career in New England. In fact, going back to Bridgewater, I'll guarantee you something. If he would have gone 500 or better in those games, he went 0-8 with a chance to win or tie the game, I guarantee you this conversation of the Panthers struggling quarterback wouldn't be happening right now. And not all of it falls on Bridgewater's guys. Some of it has been the defense not stopping anybody, questionable play calling by Matt Rule, which has resulted in 70-yard field goal attempts in the fourth quarter, and the offensive line, which allowed 31 sacks on Bridgewater, and there's several other reasons to go along with it. And trust me, I would rather take a quarterback that's a former offensive rookie of the year and a Pro Bowler than a bust like Trubisky or a developmental draft prospect like Lance, because I'm going to be honest. If you draft Lance or Jones, it's going to be an overreach, and it's going to be like drafting Jamarcus Russell over Calvin Johnson or Trubisky or another quarterback bust. It's going to set the team back years. And even as you look at the team, there's a lot of holes on the team other than the quarterback position. You could have the possibility of 4 new offensive line starters, potentially 5 if they cut Matt Paradis. You're going to need a tight end and a receiver since Curtis Samuel is a free agent, and you have DJ and Robbie Anderson on expiring contracts in the future. You need another pass rusher at the defensive tackle spot, a linebackers, and secondary players as well. And honestly, if I'm Scott Fitterer, I would do one of 2 options. First, I would try to trade back and get more picks, or 2, get the best available player, because guys like Kyle Pitts, Devontae Smith, Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain II are all better prospects and can help the Panthers in a big way than what Jones or Lance will do. And if you trade back, you get more picks, and Federer has a history with the Seahawks organization trading back and getting more picks. And some of those picks have become Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner, and many others. I'll go ahead and conclude with this. I just don't buy the opinion of bashing a quarterback 1 year into a 3-year contract where the team is rebuilding and has 2 Super Bowl MVPs and a league MVP in your division, and one of the weaker rosters heading into the National Football League last season. Look, losing does suck. I get it. But you have to be patient, and instead of having the opinion, well, I think we lost 10 games. I think we should automatically take a quarterback in the first round. Guys, football is a team sport, not an individual sport. And look, if Bridgewater suffers next year, then the discussion of drafting a quarterback can come back up. But he's going to be here next year, whether you like it or not, because of the salary cap situation. You might as well build a team holes, because I do think Carolina can be a really good football team next year. But if they want to fix a lot of areas, I don't think quarterback is solely the reason Carolina went 5-11 last year. I really don't. So moving on ahead, I think it'd be a good time to discuss my 10 early bold predictions for the 2021 NFL season, since it's always never too early to begin discussing how next season will play out. Speaking of the last topic, that's going to be my number 1 early prediction. I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to lead the Panthers to the playoffs. Matt Rule did a good job making this team competitive in his first year. I think Christian McCaffrey being back is going to help Teddy a lot. Obviously, you have 2 good receivers in Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. I think the defensive line with Brian Burns and Derek Brown is going to be good. My only concern would be the offensive line and the linebacking / secondary players. If Carolina can upgrade and use their draft picks in these areas, I really think they can make a noise in the NFC. Because as you stand right now, you have the 26th strength of schedule in the National Football League. Drew Brees is most likely going to retire. There's still an uncertainty with Matt Ryan in Atlanta, and really the only opponent that might be a challenge in the NFC South is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I think if Carolina can fix the holes on the team, I think they can really make noise in the NFC. My number 2 early prediction. I think the Kansas City Chiefs will not win the AFC West. The reason for this is simple. The Super Bowl hangover is real. Do I think the Chiefs will miss the playoffs? No. But I do think with the Chargers having Justin Herbert and Brandon Staley, leading a good defense with Joey Bosa and Dorian James, the Raiders updating their defensive coordinator hire with Gus Bradley, and Vic Fangio heading into a crucial year with the Denver Broncos, I think the AFC West isn't going to be a cakewalk for the Kansas City Chiefs. And looking at their schedule, you got Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore, Tennessee, Washington. The Chiefs might take a step back next year. Even though Kansas City made the Super Bowl the past 2 seasons, I just think that their offensive line is still a concern, and I don't think their defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense, particularly if Steve Spagnuolo is still the defensive coordinator. My number 3 early prediction, dating back to earlier what I said, Houston will be the worst team in the NFL. Texans are in the mess right now. Like I said earlier, their star quarterback isn't happy. You have your best playmaker in Will Fuller heading towards free agency. You have no defense. Your earliest pick is a third rounder. This is a no-brainer. Houston is going to struggle mightily next year. My number 4 early prediction, Vic Fangio will be the first head coach fired next season. I think Vic is a good defensive mind, but I just think the AFC West is going to be one of the hardest divisions in football, and I think the Broncos have the worst roster and quarterback in the division. Drew Lock is coming off a disappointing year. Von Miller might be cut in the offseason. There are holes in the secondary and defensive line. Shelby Harris, Justin Simmons, and Philip Lindsay are hitting free agency. I think this falls more on John Elway, who basically put Fangio in this position and recently resigned as general manager. But I do think with Lock's performance, it's going to determine Fangio's fate, and with it, I think he'll be the first coach to go. My number 5 early prediction, Dak Prescott wins Comeback Player of the Year. I think with his gruesome injury he sustained in the question of whether Dallas wants him as their quarterback, I think Prescott is going to have his best season since his rookie year. And with this, I think he's going to deserve his money because I just got this feeling that Dak is going to put up insane numbers once he returns to the field for the Cowboys. My number 6 early prediction, Russell Wilson will win league MVP. I think in my opinion now, since he certainly deserved the award last season, in my opinion, had Aaron Rodgers had not had the season he had. I know there's been talk that saying Russell Wilson is frustrated with the Seahawks organization over the team talent, but I do think like Prescott, he's going to use it as motivation, and I think he will have his best year with the Seahawks so far. And with it, I think he's going to win his first league MVP. My number 7 early prediction, Matthew Stafford will earn league MVP votes. Obviously, with the big news with Stafford heading to Los Angeles to pair with Sean McVay, I think a lot of America is going to see what Matthew Stafford truly is. I think that Detroit really didn't surround him with the talents needed him to succeed. And with Stafford being paired with guys like Cam Akers, Van Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, and a top-notch defense led by Aaron Donald, I think you're going to see Stafford in the MVP conversation. My number 8 early prediction, this will be Matt Ryan and Julio Jones last season in Atlanta. I think that the cap situation wasn't bad. I think you would see the Falcons move on from Ryan and Jones. I don't know if Arthur Smith was the right coach for the Falcons. And if I'm the Falcons, I look ahead to a rebuild project because I think if you go that route, I truly believe Atlanta can bounce back in a few years. My number 9 early prediction, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will finish with the best record in the NFL. I think by having a full offseason, a great coaching staff, Tom Brady, good weapons, and a championship defense, I think the Buccaneers are going to be the team to beat in the NFC in order to go back to the Super Bowl. However, my number 10 early prediction, the Buffalo Bills will beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Super Bowl 56 in Los Angeles. I think Josh Allen is only going to get better. Stephon Diggs is one of the best receivers in football. I like Sean McDermott as head coach. My only concern is the running back position, but I think the Bills update the running back room in the offseason, and I do think if you do that, Buffalo may have one of the best offenses in all of football next season. The defense also has some really good personnel. I think personally that the Bills will be able to get over the hump and deny the Buccaneers from winning back-to-back Super Bowls. So that is my 10 early predictions for the 2021 NFL season. Coming up on the Mitch Zone, we'll be talking about the PC's men's basketball team, the women's lacrosse team losing to Winthrop, and the women's volleyball team. But first, we will take a 2-minute music warning, and we'll be back for the second half of the program after this.
You know, Hoes, we got a lot of things coming up. I want you to be here for it. Be sure you like, subscribe, comment, Follow us on the Instagram. Check out the bluestockingpc.org, the hub for student media at Presbyterian College. Read the Blue Stocking and Figs and Thistles. Listen to 97.1. Send some ideas for what to do with the studio. We got money, we got time, and most of all, we got depression.
The Blue Hills men's basketball team is currently 7-13 overall with a 6-10 mark in Big South Conference play. They are 5-5 in home games this season, but a dreadful 2-8 on the road. I think looking at the team as a whole, I really think their biggest strength is at the guard position, and obviously you're going to need to score points to win in college basketball. And I think that the Blue Hose has a unique strength that many teams in the Big South do not have. However, I think the biggest weakness for the Blue Hills is inconsistency. What I mean by that is since the Big South is doing a 2-game series instead of a different scheduling tactic, and with this, there have been times throughout the season where PC has been able to win a good game, but the following game has not looked all that well. For example, PC will win an 85-70 contest against the Hampton Pirates, but the next game they will lose to the same opponent in a closer margin by 57-62. I know that beating 2 opponents in a row is tough, but I do think that if the Blue Hose want to advance in the Big South tournament and have the possibility of being in the semifinals or championship game, they're going to need to play more consistently. I think they have the potential to make it to the semifinals in the Big South tournament because outside of Winthrop, Radford, UNC Asheville, and Campbell, I think PC has a shot, especially since they haven't played UNC Asheville and they split their series with Radford. I think if PC can play more consistently and attack the guard position and score points, I think PC has a shot to go deep in the conference tournament and possibly might be a Cinderella story. You just never know. Switching over to women's lacrosse team, they had a bad loss to Winthrop, losing 6-19, where the Eagles went 0-7 last season. The Winthrop Eagles outscored the Blue Hose 13-3 in the first half, in which Winthrop went on a pair of 9-0 and 6-0 runs respectively. They outshot PC 31-14 and 9-for-10 on clear attempts and forced 14 turnovers. Where does PC lacrosse team go from here? Well, you never want to lose the opening game, especially to a team that went 0-7 last season. But I think going forward, you're going to need to improve the turnover margin because, let's face it, turnovers are going to cost you jobs and they're going to help lose games. And that plays a huge role in sports as well. If you turn over the ball, you're going to lose. It's simple. Number 2, I think you're going to need to take more shots, especially when you're in a position to score. Are you going to miss some shots? Sometimes, absolutely. But lacrosse is an aggressive sport. And I think if PC wants to have a successful season, you're going to need to be aggressive and be in a position to score points. It's definitely early in the season, but I think if you're the coach, that should be your main emphasis as you head back on the road to take on the Butler Bulldogs February 21st in Indianapolis. Last but not least, we'll discuss the women's volleyball team to conclude this show. PC is currently 1-3 on the season, 0-2 at home, and 1-1 on the road. They played really competitive so far in the season, and I think moving forward, I think that's the biggest key to success on this team. If you can play with an edge, attack the volleyball, and try to earn some kills on the court, blocking the volleyball over the net, I think you're going to have the potential to be one of the best teams in the Big South Conference. Looking at the schedule, it is going to be a challenge. Campbell, Charleston Southern, High Point are all undefeated. But you're right in the middle of the pack in the conference. And I feel that if you can play with an edge, I think that the season can be a success, and you have a great shot of going deep into the conference tournament when that time comes. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up here on the first ever show of the Mitch Zone here on WPCX 97.1. Thank you again for taking the time to listen and supporting the program. We'll be back here next week to discuss more about professional sports topics and things going on around Blue Hills athletics. For now, I am Mitchell Mercer, and we'll see you next time on the Mitch Zone. Have a great day, everybody.